We continue to give you more draft intel as we approach June 22nd. And also, will the second overall pick start for this team? We'll talk about that all today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. That does include YouTube. That's Doug Branson. Find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And you can listen to me here locally in Charlotte on WFNZ from 12 to 3 p.m. every single weekday. Are you ready for more draft rumors? You ready to just do the whole copy paste from whatever draft website we have, put it in the rundown, read it, give our thoughts? Are you ready to do that some more?
Yes, I just want to prepare everyone for what kind of show this is going to be. This is Friday. This is typically when we do a fun Friday show. I think this is going to be a fun Friday show. I want to prepare people by saying this. Right now in my open tabs, I have a basketball reference page with the roster of the 2015-2016 Los Angeles Lakers and an open tab that is just a Google search for Orlando Magic roster. Okay, so just get prepared for this show. It's going to get a little wacky.
Okay, so that's a great segment idea. I love it. What are your tabs open right now? Mine is...
It's a good way to preview the show.
Mine is a LaMelo Ball 2020-2021 game log. Mine is a Milwaukee Bucks Charlotte Hornets box score from 2020. It is another one. Actually, I have another one between the Hornets and the Heat in 2021, and I have Devontae Graham's game log. So that's what I have. Devontae Graham sneaking in. That I love the tab preview. And with that, stay tuned. Devontae Graham. Let's dive right in. Let's actually get to the draft intel first. That's what people are here for, Doug. And let's go to Sean Highkin of Hoops Hype. He reported that it will be interesting to see. All right, here. I did that awfully. Let's just do that again. Let's go to Sean Highkin of Hoops Hype. He said, quote, "I think more draft evaluators that you talk to, it's not 100% consensus, but the majority of people you talk to like Henderson more than Brandon Miller. This is also why Charlotte moving to number 2 is significant, because the rumor at the Combine is that they really like Miller and feel like he'll be a better long-term fit with LaMelo Ball." So that's from Sean Highkin of Hoops Hype, once again, one of the Hoops sites out there. What did you make of that comment, Doug, where you're talking about like fit, talent, people within the Hornets organization who they think they like? What did you make of that comment?
Well, it makes me worry that the Hornets are overthinking the second overall pick, and we know how dangerous overthinking the second overall pick can be. We know this because history tells us that it's a very dangerous thing. And so you have Sean Highkin here saying that, and I've heard this from other places too, that like so many of these rival executives, when they're talking about their big board, have Scoot Henderson at number 2. But then all of these guys think that Charlotte's going to go Brandon Miller because the fit. Now you can think that everybody's taking, Mitch Kupchak out of context, that they're really holding on to that quote that he had where he essentially said that, they're talented. The Charlotte Hornets are talented enough for the team to be a little bit more picky about fit. You can hold on to that, but I have a battle of cynicisms going on right now, because I'm cynical about this whole draft rumor process, especially after last year and the Paolo Banchero surprise.
Right.
I mean, you had the Anthony Bennett surprise many years ago. Like, I think a lot of this is everybody's lying. It's a mixture of everybody's lying and nobody really knows what they're going to do until the night of the draft. And so, and especially for Mitch Kupchak, I really feel like the decision is going to be made on draft night. It's not going to be locked in until then, until like 5 minutes before the card goes out. So I'm cynical about that, but I'm also cynical about this front office and their ability to stay focused and take the best player available and to not get distracted. And the fact that this front office might not even be the front office that deals with this player moving forward. I'm cynical about the entire process, but I'm having a battle of cynicisms at this point.
Well, yeah, and it's always the rival execs, and that's exactly what it was with Sean Highkin, and it's who it was. That's the source for Sam Amico, right? We all saw the Sam Amico article drop on Twitter. It wasn't extensive. It wasn't long. And I mean, to be frank, it just wasn't all that detailed with any sources, right? So then he drops that on May 25th about Scoot to the Charlotte Hornets at number 2, and then doesn't really give any reason as to why. But then he follows that up with a tweet the next day, and he said he spoke with 5 rival execs and scouts. 4 told me they have Scoot Henderson at number 2 on their draft board.
There you go.
And that's who they think the Hornets will take.
Ooh.
More at Wire Hoops and hoopswire.com. He says who's wire. I don't think he's a Virginia guy, but it's hoopswire.com. So it's all about what people have on their draft board and then who they think the Hornets will take. And I don't know where the rumors are coming that the Hornets are coming from or that the Hornets like Brandon Miller, but it's all about the rival execs and what they think about Charlotte, mostly rather than what's actually coming from the Hornets organization.
Well, that might be true. And look, I don't doubt that these rival executives, whatever that means, like whatever position they are, if they're
it's only Heat executives. Yeah, rival execs. It's only the Miami Heat.
But like, look, these guys go on the road with each other and they're at the same games. You know, I'm sure a lot of them were at Brandon Miller's game against South Carolina. You know, they travel. They probably all traveled overseas together to get a look at Wemby. So it's not like it's impossible to imagine an idea where a rival executive would have some inclination, but they probably all lie to each other too. That's the problem. Isn't, you know, they talk to each other, but how much of them are, you know, how much of it is them telling the truth to one another? I think that's what you have to question. Now you mentioned Sam Amico. You talked to him on your show, right? WFNZ. What were you able to glean anymore? Because I laughed at his particular like rumor article that didn't have a rumor. It had a rumor in the headline, didn't have a rumor in the body, didn't have any sources, but was just, you know, putting Scoot Henderson with the Hornets at number 2. Did you get any additional information, any additional context from Sam Amico on your radio show?
It was just the tweet that I read. That was the follow-up. He just brought that to the radio show. And look,
he's perfect. I mean, never change, Sam.
Yeah.
Never, ever change.
Well, and it's something, right? But it was something that was not in the initial write-up. That's the thing. Maybe there would be some kind of context where that's why you say Scoot Henderson to the Hornets at number 2, but you didn't put it in there, and then instead you just had the follow-up tweet because people were asking, why did you put Scoot Henderson to the Hornets at number 2? So he just echoed that on the radio. Okay, that's what he decided to do. So sorry,
Jonathan
Sam.
Wasserman also has something from Bleacher Report. Sources, this was in his video where he broke down his, I think his big board. I don't know if it was like a mock draft or a big board, but he said that his sources are telling him that there are people in the Hornets front office that are fans of Brandon Miller who think that, you know, he can be that next Jason Tatum, Paul George, like super wing that a lot of teams are looking for, to be fair. And, you know, size is something that still wins in this league. Maybe not size down low necessarily. Teams still do go small occasionally in that respect, but size on the wing does matter. And I think for the people that are defending Brandon Miller as the pick in the comments, that's the thing that they constantly go back to, that, hey, you got to take the guy who's properly sized for his position over the guy that is, despite the wingspan, undersized and Scoot at 6'2".
Yeah, if you think he can be Jason Tatum and Paul George, then you take him, right? That I don't think we've disagreed with that, because if he can be that, then that is as valuable a type of basketball player that you're going to get. If you don't think he can reach that, and instead there's the level below where he'll be a multiple-time All-Star, but not those guys are, you know, in Jason Tatum's case, I do think he's a 1 on a championship team with help. I do think Paul George has shown the ability to get close to it, but probably not number 1, but whatever, right? Like that conversation gets overplayed sometimes. You just want to draft the guy. If you think he can be that person, then draft him. Draft Brandon Miller. If you don't, and then you think he's more so Chris Middleton and another Pacer legend instead, like Danny Granger, then I think Scoot has the higher upside in that case. And so
I agree with you, although I will say I would take a multiple-time All-Star. Like at this point, if they draft a guy at number 2 overall and that guy ends up being a multiple-time All-Star, you're not going to hear me on this show, 10 years from now saying that was
even
a
if
terrible
Scoot's all
pick.
NBA, even if Scoot's all NBA.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, of course. I'm going to roast.
That's the idea, right? Because we think all NBA potential for Scoot. I think multiple All-Star ceiling potential for Brandon, but not all of the
and
Jason Tatum.
the story's got to write itself, right? I mean, I would feel a little bit more worried about it. I would be more panicked about the pick, I guess, if they didn't already have LaMelo. I think that does soften the blow a little bit because, if this were a situation where the Hornets had no future prospects, like, oh man, they've just got nothing they can really hang their hat on, no all NBA potential on this team, then I would be marching down Trade Street with a sign that says Scoot or we riot. But that's not the case. I mean, I think Brandon Miller can be a very good player, and if they pick him, I hate to do this because I think it's going to take a little bit of the drama out of the night, but like if they take Brandon Miller, I'm not going to like rage. I'm not going to throw chairs, because I do think Brandon Miller can be a very good player.
All right. Yeah.
I'll be upset. There's no doubt about it, but I'm not going to be throwing chairs.
All right. Now's the time. We're putting the cushion down from the building we're going to jump from. If they don't, we're putting it down now. Hopefully we can have a soft enough.
I mean, if you want to be safe, you should go ahead and make sure that all the chairs are secure. That's all I'm saying. I probably won't throw chairs, but you should probably just go ahead and glue them down to the floor just to be safe.
All right. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
All right, fine. I'll throw some chairs.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good to me. We'll go to the Sick Satchel and ask the question whether the number 2 overall pick, Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson, will they start immediately? Will they start at all this upcoming season? We'll get to that in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make a fast break to FanDuel right now during the NBA Finals because new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. They have great promotions every day. It's a safe and secure app, and you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet all of the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. More to come. Locked On Hornets. All right, it's time to go back to the Sicko Satchel here, Doug, but I got a different type of question. Go ahead and hit that intro for me, and then I'll give it to you.
Come on, you shameful little sickos.
I laugh every time. Yep. Threw me for a loop, too. I've got one myself. I entered one in the Sicko Satchel, if you don't mind. That's right. It's my first time. Long-time listener of the Sicko Satchel, first-time contributing. Really appreciate you guys welcoming me in. My question is, do you think Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller will start this year? And if so, when will they start? Is that a sicko question? Our bright, shiny new toy, number 2 overall, just sitting the bench all year long? Is there potential? Doug, I ask you. Take it away. I'll hang up and listen.
Well, the sickness is in the hope. And the hope is that you would draft someone number 2 overall that you did plan to start immediately, that you did feel like has the potential to be an immediate star. And people are going to be sick when they realize that that's not going to happen, So they will be sick about Steve Clifford being the coach because there are all of these things attached to Steve Clifford in terms of him not, this perception that he doesn't play rookies, and so people are going to rage about that, and they're going to way overreact to it. And it's just, I'm really just going to enjoy people vomiting all over themselves when that happens. That's not an answer to your question, by the way.
No,
I can try to answer it. I think,
okay.
Scoot, let me just say real quick that quick prediction. I don't think on night 1 either Scoot or Brandon starts. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I don't think they start, Doug. I liked your answer better anyway. I just want that to be clear. I liked your answer better of people vomiting over themselves at this entire experience. But I don't think he does. And we can go to a couple of other second overall picks, but I just want to go here locally, and I want to go to LaMelo. LaMelo was the 3rd, okay, 1 pick later, not number 2, but close enough. And yes, it was a different coaching regime, but just because you're this high of a draft pick, even in these situations, it does not necessarily mean that you are going to step in right away and start. LaMelo did not start until February. So it probably took a little too long for LaMelo. I didn't hate it because the idea is not to put so much pressure on LaMelo at the very beginning and you let him ease his way into the NBA. I thought it was fine. I thought we had gotten past a point to the point, all right, maybe January, maybe like a little bit earlier he should have started. But I didn't have a huge problem with the way that James Borrego decided to roll him out there. And February 1st, that's his first start in the NBA. And then he started every game he played after that. Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, they got injured. And so there was never an excuse to bring LaMelo back to the bench. And so it was a Terry Rozier injury, I believe, that allowed LaMelo to start, and he never left. But I think it would probably be something like that if Scoot was to start this year. Doug, can I venture to say that if they don't trade Terry Rozier, maybe Scoot doesn't start at all? And Brandon Miller's the interesting one, because there's a good idea to bring Gordon Hayward off of the bench. Miles Bridges isn't going to play the next 10 games if you bring Miles back. PJ Washington is someone Steve Clifford clearly values. So if you have PJ at the 4, maybe Brandon Miller has the better shot of starting right away at that 3 spot because of the suspension to Miles, and because Gordon Hayward trying to limit his minutes because he's old and injury ridden. Brandon is the likelier case, in my opinion, to start right away. What do you think?
That's interesting. I think the Miles, you bringing up the Miles suspension, that does make it a little bit more interesting. Let's before I tackle that though, I want to break down why I believe they won't start. Because the Hornets are not the Rockets. They're not the Detroit Pistons.
Right.
They do have veteran talent on this team. And they have a coach in Steve Clifford that I think we overinflate the idea that he doesn't play rookies. But at the same time, he is on record as being a guy that believes that you must earn the minutes, that you are not given the minutes, that just because you are selected second overall or even first overall or whatever, that does not mean you automatically get the minutes. So then it comes down to which player do you believe in Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller will more quickly demand those minutes by playing the right way or by even earning those minutes in summer league, preseason, training camp, the lead up. I think personally that Scoot Henderson has the ability to prove that preseason, has a better chance of it, although I think both guys have a low chance. But I think that Scoot has the better chance because he already has the NBA body, whereas Brandon Miller doesn't and is going to have to get stronger. And I don't think that's going to happen between now and the start of the season strong enough to say, oh, well, he's that's a better body than Miles Bridges. That's a better body than PJ Washington or Gordon Hayward. I still think that even if you go through the Miles suspension, if they bring PJ Washington back, then I think it's still some combo of Gordon Hayward and PJ Washington. But a lot of this comes down to health. A lot of this comes down to trades. That's the whole thing. We're having this conversation as if everybody's coming back. But I think people should be very prepared for an idea that the Hornets are suddenly a team where you don't have a Terry Rozier or you don't have a Gordon Hayward. Those are all possibilities at this point.
Yeah, I think there's a real possibility, and that, Doug, might I even say that that's what I would predict. If you don't have any trades outside of injury, maybe Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller wouldn't start at all this year. I think there's a possibility of that. The way that they would start is because of an injury. The way that they would start is because of a trade. Maybe if you get to the deadline and Scoot is just balling, Brandon's balling too. But if Scoot's balling very well, and then you talk about Terry Rozier going to the bench, the problem is we know that Steve values defense so much. Is Scoot going to come in and provide an answer on that end right away? The other thing is, like, Terry's not the guy that is so defensive intensified that you're going to say, okay, yeah, Scoot, there's no way that you can be better defensively than Terry. Like, there's a path there. So that's another option.
Yeah, Clifford loves Terry Rozier. Let's just kind of get that out there. Like, Clifford spoke a lot during the season and after the season in those interviews that he did, exit interviews, really praising all of the things that they put on Terry's shoulders and how he handled that and the attitude that he came in with each and every night that he stepped on the floor. So, like, there's that Scoot will have to overcome. But I think it's possible because of what you just said there, the defensive end of the floor. Now, when you look at Scoot's tape, there are obviously questions on that end of the floor for him. Height, you're going to be able to shoot over him. but you hope that his wingspan will help him to get into passing lanes, generate more steals, more transition opportunities. But it's the focus level on the defensive end of the floor, like in the pick and roll situations where he's letting guys get a step on him and then all of a sudden they're at the rim and he's recovering and fouling. That's what you worry about. But I think he's a blank slate. Like Terry Rozier has come in multiple seasons now saying he wants to focus on the defensive end of the floor and not done anything about it. So I just think that's baked in. We know what Terry Rozier is on the defensive end of the floor. We don't know exactly what Scoot's going to provide on that end. So I think there's an entry point for sure. If this Hornets team suddenly is contending for a playoff spot, you're going to want to lean on the guys that can start you off on the right foot on the defensive end of the floor. And I think Scoot has the opportunity there.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating to see how all that unfolds and how fans digest that, whatever decision is made. If Brandon and Scoot don't come in and start right away, are they going to do the whole
people will be
non-big
upset.
thing
I mean, there's just no doubt about that because, again, we love the new car that hasn't been driven off the lot yet. We love that smell. We love the shine of a player that has no history that we can't say, well, look at that game or look at that series or look at that season, and make judgments about them. All we have are, these guys are, he's playing under different rules. The lines are different. The rules are different. The free throw rules are different for Scoot. The line's different for Brandon Miller. Like all these things where everybody can rationalize. If you're a Brandon Miller fan, you can rationalize away his faults and make him the pick. And same with Scoot. So we love that. And the moment that Scoot steps on the floor and has 30 games and does something great or does something poor, that's when we can start to really make those judgments. But until then, everybody's going to believe that the moment that Scoot gets out there, everything changes, or the moment that Brandon Miller gets out there, that everything for the Charlotte Hornets suddenly will change. And that's just how it is.
All right, one more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
It's the sickness, baby.
It is. And speaking of it, I got one other Sicko Satchel question I wanted to get to. No, it's not mine. We will bring one from a listener. And also, we can finally get to a list that we've been wanting to get to for so long. And I don't even know if we're going to get to it because we got the number 2 overall pick, a place where this particular NBA draft prospect is not going to go. But we will give you the most famous blanks in NBA history. Still to come. Locked On Hornets.
Is Locked On Hornets.
Mitch Kupchak, will he do the thing that he has not done in season this entire
anything
time?
The thing that he has not done
It
is
always
anything.
comes back to do something.
Just do one thing.
You need to get a stick from outside and become the meme in person because it always comes back to do something.
Do something.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
All right, last Sicko Satchel question real quickly, Doug, before we get to your famous list. This one comes in from Tedsworth. He said, what blockbuster trade do you think the Hornets could make that would eventually catapult them into deep playoff contention? Tedsworth says they don't think a trade for a leap from where we are to a first-round exit is worth it at the moment. Who are some guys that make the most sense for you as to playoff contention, like actually winning a playoff series? What could you do right now? Is there any name that comes to mind?
This is a sicko question because this idea that this is how much pain we've endured, that there's really no trade that anyone could imagine that doesn't result in the Hornets losing in the first round, right? Like we can't even, because we've been losing so long, we cannot get our imagination around a scenario in which the Hornets win a first round series. Hasn't happened in more than 2 decades, 21
in this iteration's
years.
history. In this iteration's history. Yeah.
In this iteration's history and going all the way back to 2002. I mean, it is insane. And so that's the thing. There's nothing the Hornets can do. There is no block that could be busted that would allow a Hornets fan to believe until it actually happens. That's why when it does happen, it's going to be incredible. And, I know that Miami fans are going nuts about their 8th seed getting into the finals, but it's going to be nothing compared to when the Hornets win a first-round series. These fans are going to go nuts, and I can't wait.
Oh, we're gonna do
okay, the question, trades. Minnesota, I think after the way they left these playoffs and It seems to be like the whole Cat experiment with Rudy Gobert is not working. Could that be a possibility? Is that enough of a block busted if the Hornets could acquire Karl Anthony Towns, who, like, if you look at this, obviously he missed a ton of games last year. The stats have been slowly, the rebounds have slowly been going away. The points have been dropping, but that would be the perfect scenario for the Hornets to make a trade. You get a guy who's on a little bit of a slide, but does have all NBA written all over him. I mean, he could be a 25-10 or 25-12 guy again. There's no reason why he couldn't become that player. So I think Minnesota would be desperate enough. Because they've got Anthony Edwards, they've got some pieces here, but the pieces don't quite fit. So that's the kind of team that would seem to want to shake it up. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Cat. Well, this is kind of like how you feel about some of these guys, right? Like if Cat is a 2-time All-NBA player who's going to be 28 years this year, and if it allows me to not hear that all the time, then maybe I wouldn't trade for him. But if you're talking about him or a Jaylen Brown, which has been floated out there.
Oh, no, please, no.
You bring up some of the Bulls trade scenarios, but real quickly, something we haven't talked about today that actually needs to lead us on Monday. Have you seen some of these ideas about trading LaMelo? Have you seen some, like, it's actually picking up traction? Like, we can get to that on Monday, and then we can share.
From who? Because look, I mean, you think that's going to shock me? You think I read the comments. It's part of my job to go into YouTube and read some of these comments so that we can bring in Sick Satchel stuff, so we can generate content, so we know where the pulse of our fan base is. Okay, you don't think I understand that there is a large group of people that would love nothing more than for the Charlotte Hornets to trade LaMelo Ball, I don't know, to LA? Yeah, like, that's not going to shock me at all.
Yeah, well, Boston is one, and maybe you just go a LaMelo for Jaylen Brown, whatever filler you have in there. That was reported, I believe, or not reported, but that was an idea floated out there by KOC, Kevin O'Connor. So, Celtics fans.
Bill Simmons,
Yep.
I mean, he's got that connection. Bill Simmons is desperate.
Yep.
He's just going around telling people, all right, look, all the Boston Celtics trades, get them on the air.
Pay attention to my trade machine. Yeah, pay attention to my trade machine. Let's figure out how we can get Jaylen to Charlotte. And if the Hornets draft Scoot, they can trade LaMelo and trade him for Jaylen.
Just like I don't love the idea of the Charlotte Hornets taking the falling star in the draft. I've talked a lot about that. If a guy's falling to them, I talked a lot about it because the Hornets drafted at 11 or 12, where you do catch falling stars so often.
Yeah.
And so I don't love that idea. I also don't love trading for the guy that everyone, after a team loses a series in which he turns it over 8 times and can't dribble, and everyone says, hey, maybe they should trade this guy. I don't love the idea of trading for that guy.
It seems like Cat would fit this bill for you, though, Doug. Like, he fits the Devin Booker. I mean, he hasn't accomplished anything close to what Jaylen or Devin Booker even has. Like, so, or even, I mean, hell, even a DeRozan or Zach LaVine for that matter. Like, Cat can't be a type of guy that you want to trade for, given your history.
Well, I wouldn't be ecstatic about it, but you do have to understand. And I do understand this, that the Hornets need these kinds of opportunities to open themselves up, right? I mean, Toronto needed things to sour between Kawhi and San Antonio, and uncles and, family members to get involved. Like, they needed all of that to weirdly fall apart to open up that opportunity for Toronto. Yeah. So, the Hornets aren't going to be able to trade for stars. I don't know any team. It's really difficult to make trades for guys that are stars on the rise without giving up an amazing ton of assets, similar to what Minnesota did for Rudy Gobert. Like, you don't really want to be in that scenario. You'd rather be a team that finds, a little loophole in the system, a glitch in the system, which is what Cat's going through right now in Minnesota, and find that opportunity to make that trade. Look, I mean, if you told me that they trade for Cat and he comes here and is able to score 25 and 12 and finally open up some opportunities for this team to go 5 out offensively, which is what Steve Clifford has been desperately begging for his entire coaching career, like, I love Mark Williams, but Not that
I mean,
much.
defensively, it would be a huge step back, which I think Steve would have a real problem with.
Well, you
but,
can't fix.
Here's
25
the thing. Points
and,
is great. No,
that's
you're right.
fine.
Like,
but
I'm
I want to say
you
this.
what it would be, right? It would be a huge step back defensively. I just gave you that info. That's all.
Okay, that's fine. Here's the thing. You cannot fix every single problem in one off season. At some point it has to be about acquiring enough talent to get on the dance floor. And once you get on the dance floor, if you miss a couple of steps, then you can take all that back to the laboratory and then make some adjustments around the amazing talent that you have. And then that's how this process works. You get to the playoffs. That's step one. You have enough talent to get to the playoffs. That's step one. Then you win a playoff series. That's step two. And then you worry about competing for a finals. All these people, again, they're asking the Charlotte Hornets to play 4D roster chess when they can't win a game of tic-tac-toe. They can't win a game of shoots and ladders. This team can't win a game of hide and seek.
Mm-hmm. So trade for him unless it's Jaylen Brown. Then don't do that.
No, don't do it for Jaylen Brown.
Yeah,
you can't do it for Jaylen Brown.
All right.
No, he had 8 turnovers.
That's right. Okay, let's go to your famous list here, Doug. So maybe you don't want to trade for one of these stars. Maybe you do. But is there a trade package that you could create to where you're exchanging draft picks? What about Orlando or Dallas has number 10, right? So what's the draft order here? What are the draft picks you're looking to trade for here, Doug?
Well, Dallas has number 10. That could be interesting. Dallas, a team, maybe they re-sign Kyrie Irving and they try to go after this thing, and they're not necessarily interested in a 10th overall pick. Maybe they're interested in some of the middling talent that the Hornets have. So that could be interesting. But also, what about a trade for more assets? Not necessarily a player, but maybe you do focus a little bit more on the future and you go after, say, an Orlando that has some young talent that you could add. A Bol perhaps. Somebody that can change up the game a little bit. You can go 5 out with Bol. He's shown the ability to hit the 3 pretty consistently. And the Magic own 2 lottery picks. Now, 2 lottery picks is not necessarily better than 1 when that 1 is the 2nd overall pick. I understand that. But if those 2 picks come back with a piece of young talent, maybe a future first-round pick for the number 2 overall pick, if Orlando is super interesting in pairing a Brandon Miller or a Scoot Henderson next to Paolo Banchero, then I think you have to take that call. You have to entertain it. You have to think about it. It also opens up the possibility. And I'll say this too. The Charlotte Hornets have been mentioned as teams that have participated in workouts or are going to host workouts for Asur Thompson and for Anthony Black. I've seen the Hornets listed with both of those players. Those are both guys that are going in the 5 to 10 range. They're not guys that are being entertained for the number 2 overall pick. So I think the Hornets are obviously covering their bases in case some kind of trade back scenario happens. They want to see what guys could be interesting adds in that position. But another name that I haven't seen mentioned with the Hornets at that position is this guy out of Kansas, really interesting, Grady Dick. Okay. Which then brings me back to a list that I've had for a long time. We've gotten through 6 of these names. The most famous Dicks in basketball history. Could Grady Dick, the question is, how easy would it be for Grady Dick to come in, become a Charlotte Hornet, and become the most famous Dick in basketball history? Are you ready for the remainder of this list?
The grade A Dicks, if you will, right? That's what you're telling me here?
Totally. Grade A, 100%. These are the most famous Dicks in basketball history.
Gotcha.
And I want to just make sure that I have my fanfare ready. Okay, great. That's worked. A little tech check in the middle of the show. Celebrate. No problem. Here we go. So a little list review, the most famous Dicks in basketball history. Here we go. Number 10, Dick Garrett.
Grade A.
Number 9, Dick Barnett. Number 8, Dick Van Arsdale.
Yeah.
Famous. Number 7, Dick McGuire. Now, a lot of hoop heads. Not a lot.
Big time.
Not a lot, but a few hoop heads will know Dick McGuire. Number 6, the first Charlotte Hornet on this list, the first head coach in Charlotte Hornet history, of course. I'm talking about Dick Harder.
Yeah, great one. Great Dick.
All right, here we go. Nobody's heard the remainder of this list. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. Yeah, top 5 Dicks in NBA history. Let's do it. Basketball
most
history.
Famous Dicks in basketball history. Come on.
Yep.
Man. Number 5, JJ Redick.
Yeah, big
3-point
time
shooting.
now. Getting a
What's
lot
that?
more famous. Yeah, 100%.
Could be coach. Could be a coach. Could be a coach
Could
of
be.
Charlotte Hornets someday. They're going to be looking
Coach
for a
Red
coach
Dick.
at some point.
Could be.
All right, number 4, Dick Bavetta.
Oh, yeah. The classic race between him and Charles Barkley, the old official, Dick Bavetta. Fantastic stuff.
All right, here we go. The most famous dicks in basketball history. Number 3, Grayson Allen.
Oh, now we're doing biggest dicks in basketball history. Just the biggest. Yes, no doubt. Grayson Allen, great one. Top 3 for sure.
How about number 2? This is why it's basketball history, not NBA history. Dickie V. Dick Vitale.
Oh, he's not number 1. Wow.
You were thinking Dick Vitale, number 1.
I thought it was just all formality. I thought we'd roll through the list, and then I was just waiting. Oh, wow, Dick Vitale, number 1. Okay, all right, gotcha. Who's number 1, Doug? I'm surprised.
The number 1 most famous dick in basketball history, according to the Locked On Hornets podcast, for those who would like to aggregate it, is Wilt Chamberlain. There it is. There's a list.
All right, Wilt Chamberlain, your most famous dick in basketball history. We appreciate you. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make your second listen. Game to game NBA, every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. You can follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday.